My neighbor saw me in the bath. Then, things got dangerous. I never expected to feel that way again. Not after all these years. Not with him. Not with a stranger. My name is Samantha, and I had spent the last 5 years of my life in a marriage that felt more like a schedule than a connection. Jake, my husband, was a good man, dependable, responsible, stable, but he was also emotionally absent, swallowed whole by deadlines, meetings, and performance reviews. Our conversations became logistics, our intimacy infrequent and mechanical, and the worst part was somewhere along the way I stopped asking for more. Until one summer evening when I stepped into the bath and left the window open just a crack. That's when it happened. That's when Michael saw me. I didn't know he was there. Not until our eyes met through the steam and the silence. I froze, half shocked, half embarrassed, but also something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not anger, desire. It wasn't just the fact that he saw me. It was how he looked at me. Not with judgment, not even with lust, just curiosity. Genuine, stunned curiosity. Like he was seeing something rare, something he wasn't supposed to witness but couldn't look away from. That single second changed everything. He stepped back inside, and I pulled the curtain shut, but it was already too late. The boundary had been crossed, the spark already lit. I stood in that bath for another hour, heart pounding, mind spinning, wondering what had just happened and why I couldn't stop thinking about it. Jake didn't notice anything different that night. He kissed my cheek without looking at me. He asked about dinner without asking how I was. But something had changed, not just between Michael and me, but inside me. And I knew this was only the beginning. My black neighbor was very curious and saw me while bathing a true infidelity story. The day after the bath window incident, I told myself to forget it, to move on, to chalk it up to an accident and pretend it never happened. But pretending has never come easily to me, especially not when I feel something this deeply. I found myself glancing across the street far more than usual. Michael's house was perfectly in view from our front windows. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. He was just the quiet neighbor who kept to himself, always polite but distant. But now, every time I saw him, even just the silhouette behind his blinds, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. Was he thinking about it too? Had he told anyone? Did he regret seeing me? Or had he wanted to see more? By the third day, I couldn't take the silence. I needed to know. I stepped outside to water the plants that didn't need watering. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in years, flowing soft, just a little low at the neckline. I told myself it was ridiculous I wasn't doing anything wrong, until he stepped outside too. Michael emerged onto his balcony like he had the first night, but this time he didn't look away. Our eyes met and held. He smiled a small, cautious smile, and I felt the air in my lungs pause. I smiled back. There was something about that moment that neither of us could deny. It wasn't innocent anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It was acknowledgement. An unspoken agreement that something had started and neither of us knew how to stop it. That evening, I couldn't sit still. Jake was late again. He sent a text at 7:46 p.m., working late. Don't wait up. It didn't surprise me. It rarely did. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I stepped out onto the porch just before sunset. I didn't even have a reason. I just needed air. Or maybe I needed him. Michael was already outside as if he'd been waiting. He waved. Evening. Hey, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Nice out. It is. A pause. Then he added, I think we need to talk. My breath caught. About. He gave me a look that said he didn't believe my question for a second. I nodded. Okay, yes. We do. He walked over slowly as if making sure I wouldn't retreat. I didn't. I stood firm, not brave exactly, but ready. I want to apologize, he said once he was close enough. I didn't mean to. I shouldn't have been looking. I should have looked away. I shook my head. You don't have to apologize. It was an accident. Maybe he said, but it didn't feel like just that. Did it? I hesitated. No, I admitted. It didn't. We stood there, inches apart, the evening air thick with humidity and tension. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. All I know is that his hand brushed mine barely a touch, but it was like a current ran through my entire body. "Samantha," he said softly, "are you sure you want to do this?" I looked into his eyes. They weren't hungry. They weren't desperate. They were searching, serious, careful, asking for permission. I didn't answer. I stepped into him instead. His lips met mine like a confession. Slow, hesitant, but deep. Our bodies leaned in like they had waited too long. My hands tangled in his shirt. His fingers traced the edge of my waist. It wasn't just heat, it was release, like we had both been holding our breath for far too long. We pulled away after what felt like an eternity and a second all at once. I didn't say anything. I just walked back inside, leaving the door open behind me for 3 full seconds before I closed it. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid Jake would find out he didn't even notice I was awake when he came home hours later, but because for the first time in years, I felt awake. I felt alive, and I couldn't stop thinking about what it all meant. The next day I ran into Michael at the grocery store, completely unplanned. Or maybe fate just has a cruel sense of timing. "Hey," he said with that same soft smile. Running away from me. "Not even close," I replied, unable to keep the grin off my face. We made small talk. Bananas, coffee brands, the heat wave. But the undertone was anything but casual. It buzzed. It pressed into every syllable. He walked me to my car, helped load my bags, then he touched my arm before I stepped in. "Can I see you?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Tonight." That evening, I told Jake I had plans with Lisa. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Have fun," he muttered. I did. More than I should have. Michael opened his door the moment I knocked. No pretense, no games. We didn't speak much. We didn't have to. The silence between us said it all. That night in his bed, I remembered what passion felt like, what intimacy without obligation felt like, what it felt like to be someone's choice, not their routine. He touched me like he meant it, like every part of me mattered, not rushed, not mechanical. He learned my skin like it had a language, and I spoke back with every sigh, every shiver. We lay there afterward, the moonlight pooling on the floor. "I've wanted this since the day I moved in," he admitted. I looked at him. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you were married. I didn't think you saw me." I smiled faintly. "I see you now." He leaned over, kissed my shoulder. "I don't want this to just be a fling, Samantha." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything at all. But I knew deep down I didn't want that either. My black neighbor was very curious and saw me, while bathing a true infidelity story. The days that followed blurred together, part fantasy, part fear. Michael and I were cautious at first. Texts hidden under aliases, glances exchanged only when no one was watching. But no matter how careful we tried to be, the truth was undeniable. Something had begun, and it wasn't slowing down. Every time I saw him, I felt like a live wire. Every brush of his fingers, every word spoken just below a whisper lit something inside me I thought had died. And with each passing day, my world with Jake grew colder in contrast. I tried to be the same woman in both lives. I really did. I cooked dinner. I kissed Jake on the cheek when he walked through the door. I asked about his day, even though I knew the answer would always be the same: busy, exhausted, fine. But even as I asked, even as I listened, I felt myself drifting, because now I knew what it felt like to be seen, to be heard, to be wanted. Michael didn't just touch my body, he touched my mind. We talked about everything: our childhoods, our regrets, the things we never said out loud to anyone. Sometimes we'd sit on his couch for hours, the TV on, but muted, wrapped in conversation and bare skin. One night, as we lay tangled in his sheets, he said something I wasn't ready to hear. "I think I'm falling for you." I didn't respond. I just turned away, my heart thudding in my chest, because deep down I already knew I had fallen too. But love in the middle of a lie is a dangerous thing, and part of me still believed I could keep the two lives separate. I was wrong. It started with Lisa. She noticed the changes in me long before Jake did, the way I smiled to myself when I thought no one was looking, the way I stopped texting back quickly, the way I suddenly became vague when she asked about my week. "Samantha," she said one afternoon, coffee in hand and concern in her eyes, "is there something going on?" I shook my head. "What do you mean? You seem distracted, different." "I've just been thinking," I said carefully, "about my life, about Jake and me, about everything." She nodded slowly but didn't push. What I didn't know at the time, what I couldn't have known, was that Lisa had been harboring her own secret, her own longing. And it was closer than I ever imagined, because while I was falling into something reckless with Michael, Lisa was growing closer to Jake. It started with innocent check-ins, then long conversations, then quiet moments she didn't tell me about. And when I drifted further away from Jake, she stepped into the space I had left behind. And Jake, my husband, my inattentive, absent husband, let her. One night, Michael and I were together when my phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "Can we talk?" Something about it sent a chill down my spine. I made up an excuse, left Michael's place early, and called her from my car. "What's going on?" I asked. Silence. "Then I need to be honest with you." The conversation that followed shattered something inside me. Lisa confessed to feelings she had long buried, for Jake, for our friendship, for the resentment she had hidden behind smiles and supportive words, and now, with Jake vulnerable and distant, she had acted on them. They had kissed, maybe more. I pulled the car over and sat in stunned silence. Was this karma? Was this my punishment for what I had done? I didn't know. All I knew was that the life I thought I was controlling had begun to unravel faster than I could grasp. When I walked through the front door, Jake was already home. He looked up from the couch, eyes tired, expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said. My heart dropped. "Okay," I whispered. He stood. "I know something's going on. I've known for weeks. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm not an idiot." My throat went dry. "Jake, don't lie to me," he snapped. "Just don't." I looked down at the floor. "I didn't plan for this," I said. "It just happened. I was lonely. You weren't here. You weren't with me anymore. And so you cheated," he said, voice shaking. "With him." The weight of his words crashed over me. The judgment, the disbelief, the pain. "Yes," I said finally. "I did." He stared at me, stunned. "I gave you everything." "No," I said louder now. "You gave me routine, you gave me structure, but you didn't give me. You stopped seeing me a long time ago. And that justifies this, no. Nothing justifies it. But it explains it." We stood there in silence. The walls of our home never felt so tight, the rooms never so hollow. Eventually, he walked upstairs without another word, and I sank to the floor, knees trembling, heart aching with the weight of what I'd broken. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. Jake moved into the guest room. Lisa stopped texting. "Michael, God, even?" Michael noticed my withdrawal. "What's going on?" he asked one evening as I sat across from him, eyes glassy, hands clenched in my lap. "I told him," I said. "Jake knows. Lisa, too." His face tightened. And now everything's ruined." He reached across the table, taking my hands in his. "Not everything," he said. "We're still here." I shook my head. "You don't understand. I can't even tell if this was real or if it was just me trying to escape." "You didn't escape," he said. "You chose something different, something you needed. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human." Tears welled in my eyes. But I heard him. "I know," he said softly, "and you'll carry that. But you don't have to carry it alone." I don't know how long we sat there. I just remember thinking, this isn't the end. It's the reckoning. And I had to decide what kind of woman I wanted to be starting now. My black neighbor was very curious and saw me while bathing, a true infidelity story. In the days after the truth came crashing down, silence wrapped itself around everything: our home, our friendships, our futures. It was the kind of silence that didn't offer peace, it offered consequence. Jake barely looked at me. I'd hear him in the kitchen moving with robotic precision. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He didn't say goodnight. He didn't even look angry anymore. And somehow that was worse than yelling, because silence is what people use when they're too hurt to even try anymore. Lisa stopped reaching out entirely. Her absence wasn't unexpected, but it was deafening. I thought about her more than I cared to admit. We had shared everything once: secrets, dreams, late-night confessions, and now we were strangers with too much history to erase. And Michael tried to stay steady through it all. He would call, check in, remind me that I wasn't alone. And for a while I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was the one good thing to come out of this chaos. But the truth was that even with Michael, something had changed. Not because I didn't want him. I did. I still do. But because everything was now stained by the choices that brought us together. Every touch reminded me of what I had destroyed. Every kiss echoed with the names of the people I had hurt. And no matter how many times I told myself it had all started with loneliness, I couldn't silence the voice that whispered, "You crossed a line you can never uncross." One night I sat in the backyard alone, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. I heard the gate creak open behind me. I knocked. Michael said softly, "You didn't answer." I didn't look up. I didn't hear it. He sat beside me, quiet, patient. "I miss you," he said. I looked at him then. His face was weary but honest. There was no pressure in his voice, just truth. "I miss you too," I whispered. He took my hand. We sat in the silence together, our fingers threaded in the dark. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I finally said. "I know. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I know that too." "But I did." He nodded. So did I. And there it was, our confession. He leaned his head against mine. "What do you want now, Samantha?" I stared out at the night. "I want to feel whole again. I want to stop waking up in a life I don't recognize." He sighed. "And what does that look like?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know it starts with owning what I did. All of it, no more hiding." So that's what I did. The next morning I sat Jake down in the kitchen. His face was unreadable, his body stiff with guarded pain. "I know I broke something in us," I began. "And I know it may never be repaired, but I need to take responsibility for that. I won't blame you. I won't blame the job. This was me. And I'm sorry." He didn't speak for a long time. Then, "Are you still seeing him?" I shook my head. "No, because you chose me." "No," I said quietly, "because I needed to find myself before I could choose anything." He looked down at the table. "You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me." "I know. I used to think I knew you. I used to think I knew me too." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with something I couldn't quite name. Pain. Clarity. Maybe even closure. "I'm going to stay at my brother's for a while," he said. "I need space." I nodded. "Take all the time you need." When he left, the house felt impossibly large. But also, for the first time in weeks, it felt honest. The weight of secrecy was gone. In its place, consequence and the first fragile hint of peace. That night, I texted Lisa. I know I broke our friendship. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Not for finding out, not for the fallout, but for failing you when you trusted me most. You were my best friend, and I let you down." She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to, but I needed her to hear it. And then I turned to Michael. I invited him over that Friday evening, not for passion, not for escape, but for clarity. He brought a bottle of wine. We sat on the couch, both of us hesitant. "I've been thinking," I said, fingers wrapped around the stem of the glass, "about who we are, about how this started. I know it wasn't perfect," he said, "but it was real. "I know," I said, "but real doesn't always mean right." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm not saying goodbye," I added. "I'm just saying I need time. I need to know that whatever happens between us isn't built on broken pieces. I need to build something clean again, something that doesn't start in the shadows." He looked at me, pain flickering in his expression, but also understanding. "I'll wait," he said, "if that's what you need." I reached for his hand. "Thank you." And in that moment I knew this chapter wasn't about endings. It was about reckoning, rebuilding, redefining. Michael stood to leave. He kissed my forehead, nothing more, and walked out the door quietly. And I sat in the stillness of my home, surrounded by the echoes of my choices. For the first time in a long time, I was alone, but not lost. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step to finding my way back. My black neighbor was very curious and saw me while bathing, a true infidelity story. There's a moment after everything falls apart where the silence feels unbearable, where you look at the pieces of your life scattered around you and wonder how you let it get this far. I sat in that silence for a long time, not blaming anyone, not justifying anything, just sitting with it. I had hurt the man I once promised forever. I had betrayed my best friend. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. And still, somewhere deep in that chaos, I found something I didn't expect myself. See, this story isn't about an affair, not really. It's about what happens when we stop asking to be seen, when we start living in the margins of our own lives, convincing ourselves that loneliness is just part of the deal. What Michael gave me wasn't just attention, it was reflection. He held up a mirror and showed me a woman I hadn't seen in years, a woman who still longed to be touched, heard, chosen. Not out of duty, but out of desire. But desire without truth becomes destruction. I had to stop running. I had to feel every consequence, every crack in my foundation to truly rebuild something honest. Not with Michael, not with Jake, but within myself. Maybe I'll reconcile with Jake someday. Maybe I won't. Maybe Michael and I will find each other again on solid ground this time. Maybe we won't. But here's what I know: I will never again let myself fade into the background of someone else's story. I am not a supporting character in my own life, and neither are you. Have you ever made a choice that changed everything? One that forced you to see yourself differently, even if it came at a cost? Tell your story in the comments. Someone might be waiting to read the words you're brave enough to write. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in these powerful human stories. You deserve to be seen, you deserve to be heard, and sometimes you deserve to start over.